Hello there. This is Paul Glumaz, 44-year veteran of the movement of Lyndon LaRouche, and this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents, and today is the 3rd of December 2018. We are going into global cooling, not global warming. Ha! You've been fooled. Back when I was 40 years ago, 45 years ago, everyone was saying it was going to be global cooling. And they were looking at all the trends from the ice ages and all of that, and it was global cooling. And then all of a sudden, no one knows why, it ended. And then they started talking about global warming. And they've been going on about global warming. And they've done a lot of, massaging and figures and this and that, and it's not happening, folks. And CO2, carbon dioxide, it does not cause an increase in the temperature. The rising of the temperature is followed by the rising of carbon dioxide. Why? Because there's a massive amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean. And when the temperature rises, a lot of that gets released. When the temperature is decreased, a lot of it's reabsorbed. Folks, it's very simple. And and what causes that to happen is the sun. The increase of activity of the sun has an impact in the decreased activity of the sun. And if the carbon dioxide levels reach a certain lower level because of the ice age or what have you, guess what happens? The plants go crazy. They start dying, and then they become they shrivel up and die, and then they spew all over the ice dust, and then the dust picks up radiation, and that starts a melting process. So this whole thing is nuts, and you have to ask yourself, why are people so zealously committed to it? All the scientists agree. Nobody ever said all the scientists agree. There's no such thing as all the scientists agree. All the scientists agree. Oh, you are a climate denier. Oh, you think you can trust your own thinking and not the experts? I had one person tell me that. I says, well, how do you know? Well, I've looked into it. I've studied it a bit. I've looked into it. The global warming thing doesn't make any sense. Why? Do you trust your own thoughts? You trust your own thinking relative to experts? Well, if you can't trust your own thinking and you can't think for yourself, then you're a peasant. So we got a lot of peasants out there who don't trust their own thinking. They only trust the experts. And the experts, well, that's where the money is. The money's coming in, and the experts, have to be worried about their grants, so they gotta eat. They don't want to be, starving academics. They like nice things like everybody else. You think scientists aren't corrupt? If the society is corrupt, do you think scientists are the ones who are not corrupt? So today I'm spouting off. I don't usually do this. Usually I give you a strategic briefing, but today I'm going to spout off a bit. So I had the experience over the weekend of doing a little investigation into a matter of local importance in the Seattle area, and that matter is affordable housing. And the rents went up. They're building all these apartment buildings. You got to put in $2,500 a month for a studio. You had all these techies coming in, right? And bang, it started to slow down, and the bubble stopped. And now 1/4 of the new apartments out there don't have tenants; they are vacant. But affordable housing, it's not affordable. And if you're a senior, or you're disabled, and you're on Social Security, you might get in a couple of years. That's pretty quick. Into subsidized housing. Or if you're one of those lucky people, when Section 8 rolls around, lottery, you might win the lottery and get a subsidized, have your rent subsidized. But otherwise, you're not a priority. You got a problem, right? So there's 608. King County has about 1.9 million people. It's got only 608 buildings for affordable, and these are not large buildings for the most part. These are not big high rises with hundreds of apartments. These are not, you got about 608 buildings. And when you go to apply for them, you got to apply for each building at a time, or a set of buildings. It's not like you apply and then you get, it's across the board. You get your choice. You have to choose a building. So you could be waiting 5 years. Maybe a year or two, if you're lucky. So what do people do if they don't have a job and they run out of the unemployment insurance? What are they going to do? Well, they say the official statistics are that there are 12,500 homeless in King County. Do you believe that? Everywhere you go, every freeway, every corner, there's somebody begging, there's somebody sleeping. Everywhere you go now in Seattle, you're going to run into somebody sleeping somewhere, on the sidewalk, in the park, on the bench, So there's only 12,500 of those in King County. Maybe they're somewhat concentrated. How do they count 12,500? Oh, people that go to shelters? People that go to food banks? I don't know how they count 12,500, but I know one thing: it's got to be a lot more. And then there's a whole class of homeless that are not really homeless, but they're really homeless. We call them road warriors or nomads. And they live in cars, and they live in vans, and they live in motorhomes. And they don't have what they do is they have an address, a legal address somewhere. It could be in Florida, it could be in Kansas, but they're living here. Or maybe they leave and they go somewhere else. And there's been a massive expansion of these people all over, everywhere. And then you have the people, a lot of the younger people, they have a system of, networking. And what they do is they go to Portland. They have some friends and they couch surf for a few weeks or a month, and then they go down to Colorado or up to, they go down to LA or the Bay Area. They have friends. It's a network, and there's little communes and stuff like that. So you got a large number of people that are couch surfing all out there, that are coming in and going out, couch surfing. So you got couch surfing, and the new nomads. The new and there's it's growing, and you can't count that because they're not there to be counted. you know. And most of these people work. They're migrant workers. They work in the fields and in the harvesting times, they do odd jobs to survive. So this is America, 2018, going into 2019. So it is the homeless situation. Also has an incredible effect on people because everywhere you go, you see them. It doesn't make you feel very good to see a homeless person. You know, it's just not it's like ruins your day. You know, and because you're a human being and they're a human being and they look at these people in these conditions and you don't feel good about it. What can you do? So I said, well, how do they handle homeless in other areas? So I decided, well, let me look at how they handle homeless in other areas. And someone suggested to me, why don't you check out Singapore? Singapore. So I went and checked out Singapore. I went out and checked out affordable housing in Singapore. And I was shocked. When they became independent in 1960, the government got control of 90% of the land. This is the land that was unused, basically. And over the course of this period, from 1960, they have built these high-rise apartment buildings in 8 major clusters. They have built 1 million apartment. Government has built 1 million apartment. And these are not little apartments. These are not 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, These are 5 bedroom apartments. These are apartments to raise your kids in. Okay? And this is government housing put on by the Housing Development Board, run by the Housing Development Board. So how do low-income people get into one of these things? How does somebody that can't afford the rent get into one of these things? Very simple. The Housing Development Board they don't subsidize your rent. What they do is they subsidize your purchasing of a 99-year lease. So you don't just go in there, as subsidized housing. You go in there actually with a title of ownership of the 99-year lease. And they'll give you the mortgage. And if you can't pay the mortgage, they have another fund, which is like their Social Security fund, which is 20% of all wages get deducted into that Social Security fund, equivalent of Social Security fund. I forgot the name of it. And 17% of the employer's part goes in. That fund will assist you in paying your mortgage. Now, if you're a single person and you can't find a place and you are earned below $1,500 a month, they'll subsidize your rent. So, and then you have the right later on to sell your 99-year lease. So you're not a homeowner, you're a lease owner, but 99 years is a long time. And so that's Singapore. That's incredible. We should do something like that here. Build all these affordable places on a mass scale and subsidize people having, purchasing them. Anyhow, so what's the difference? Well, the United States real estate is created on apartments and homes are created on the basis of real estate speculation or speculation. And in the 60s and 70s, a lot of developers bought land in the suburbs, raw land, and, you know, who's going to go to the suburbs? Man, why do you want to go to the suburbs? What for? We live in a community, right? And so the developers would get in cahoots with the local bankers, and they would get in cahoots with law enforcement, and they would redline an area, and they would use the dilapidation and massive increase of crime in those areas to drive people out to the suburbs. That's how we created suburbia, through massive real estate speculation. And then decades later, we turned it around. Now we're driving them back in. Gentrification. Now we're cleaning up the slum areas, the inner city areas, the ghettos, and we're gentrifying them, and that's another real estate boom. That's another real estate speculation. So that's why we build homes in the United States. We build them on the basis of speculation. Now that's not completely the case. There was a time when we had more regulations under FDR, and we had a mortgage system that was affordable to everybody. But that's not happening right now. So I thought I'd give you a little local something here. And now I'll just give you a quick summary on the international situation. There was the Group of 20 meeting in Buenos Aires. The Mueller developments and the Ukrainian developments essentially prevented Trump from having a meeting there with Putin. But Trump did have an extensive meeting a dinner with Xi Jinping. And everybody was there, Mnuchin on one end and Pompeo and Bolton on the other end. And the Chinese came very prepared. Xi Jinping took the lead. Xi Jinping did the negotiating. He didn't use subordinates. And the proposals that Xi Jinping made for how to deal with the crisis were substantive enough that 90 days have been the trade war has been postponed for 90 days while they work out details. This is huge. This is a big victory because it opens up the process of discussion of what they're going to do. And the problem is the banking and financial crisis. Now, to give you a sense of the financial crisis, is the big ticket item is the corporate debt bubble. And for about a decade now, corporations have been borrowing money. Large corporations like GE and General Motors, have been borrowing money and buying their stock. In the case of GE, which is one of the most, General Electric, and is one of the most outstanding examples, they purchased $40 billion worth of stock at $22 to $30 an ounce, a share, and it is now selling at $8.60. No good. That is insane. And General Motors, same thing. And this has forced them to lay off 15,000 people, I believe. So this is very serious. And this is not being helped by the fact that the Federal Reserve is raising the interest rates. It was, all that low interest money, all the banks were getting zero interest money. And they were lending it to the corporations. They're creating a huge corporate debt bubble, and the corporations were buying their own stock. Hey! Is that not a Ponzi scheme? They did it with the mortgages. Now they're doing it with corporate debt. So now, they have $1 to $2 trillion of corporate debt waiting to blow out. And now the servicing of the debt, rolling over the debt, is going to be more expensive because the Fed is raising the interest rate. And naturally, of course, Trump has attacked. Trump has said, the Federal Reserve is more dangerous than Putin, or more dangerous than Russia. I would say that's true. I would say that's very true. And of course, the Federal Reserve raising of interest rates also affects the emerging markets. It's also an attack on India, China, and all these emerging markets. So we have a war going on, folks, and it's going to get more intense. But I think the Trump administration dodged a bullet on the China trade war, because if this thing had gone into a full trade war, who knows what would have happened. But they postponed it 90 days, and that's 90 days to figure out what to do. Now, we had an Italian legislator from the European Parliament, Marco Zanni, come to Washington to talk to the congressman about Glass-Steagall. But more importantly, the new Italian government has a lot of people in it that are friends of Lyndon LaRouche, and who signed a petition on Glass-Steagall with 207 signatures, which we brought to the Congress, which Marco Zanni brought to the Congress. But there was also another person in Washington. His name is Garaci. He's another somebody we've been talking to, who spoke in our conference. He's a cabinet minister in Italy, and he's the one working with China. He's the one that set up the China task force. He's fluent in Chinese, and he's the one that's working out with China the investments, an investment plan for China in Italy. And also, he's the one who is very big on joint development of Africa, especially the Transaqua project in Africa, the large water infrastructure project. And he came to Washington. He spoke with some Trump officials about how they could do the same thing that Italy's doing. Rather than compete with China, they can complement and coordinate with China an expansion of U.S. trade or expansion of Italian trade based upon the Belt and Road. Now, what's significant here is that in this context, there is a massive revolution beginning to occur in Europe. People have had it in Europe. There's a massive revolt in France. We're headed towards, potential guillotine-style circumstances, like in the late 1700s. I mean, this is really picking up. And there's a beginning of a revolt in Germany against what they call the climate change dictatorship, which is devastating the working class right now with the because of solar and wind and the shutting down of nuclear power. The cost of energy has gone up beyond belief, and then the wages, and then the austerity is being imposed, and now they're doing a whole thing on the diesel, banning diesel and forcing people to pay either more taxes or whatever. It's reaching a threshold of mass demonstrations in Germany, and our movement has been asked to participate in that and or help organize it. So you would have never thought the Germans would rise up, but the German population would rise up, but it looks like they're heading in that direction. And then you have the similar developments in Great Britain. Meanwhile, we sent a delegation to Spain and Portugal, and that area is very open for working in the new paradigm, especially in Portugal and Spain. So that's a very interesting development. But what's going on right now is you will have new leaders in Europe. It's clear that the existing leadership of France, Germany, and Great Britain, United Kingdom, they're not going to be there much longer. The population has had it. In the next elections, they're all going to go. In the European parliamentary elections in May, they're all going to go. This is enormous. The entire transatlantic financial system is, the European side is going into full revolt. In a sense, our election of Donald Trump here was part of that same process, and that happened for the same reasons. Okay, and despite the media hype and the media control and their attempt to control the dialogue and discussion and everything else like that, that is the real cause of everything. Meanwhile, Anonymous has leaked the existence of something called the Integrity Initiative, which is massive British intervention in U.S. European, other countries' political process. You know, organizing demonstrations, organizing, firing key people, targeting key individuals that they didn't like in various countries. This is a massive network run through British intelligence and MI6, and a lot of those networks will come out in the declassification uh, when Trump declassifies all these documents. The declassification is huge. The involvement of the British in trying to set up Trump with Russian collusion is massive. So all of this is coming into focus, and we have huge battles about to break out over whether the forces that are emerging that have rejected the failed policies, whether those forces will actually come to the fore and actually adopt a successful policy. And of course, if you've been watching this, you know where the LaRouche movement policies are. You know, Glass-Steagall accredited system, infrastructure, and crash program in science and technology, and fusion power. And you know that if you've been watching or following, and that is on the table, and that's where the China U.S. relationship is the potential hinge for.